talking about a bunch of my absolute favorite romantic relationships in sci-fi fan. Now, a little forewarning, this might seem a little spoilery. I know some people like to go in completely blind to books they haven't read, and they don't want to know who ends up with who, and I completely understand that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mention the book first, and then I'll talk about the relationship within that book that I really like. Now, none of these books have like will they, won't they love triangles in them, so you can rest assured that none of these books have where like one of the girls is picking between two of the guys. So like that's not a thing in any of these. So you don't have to worry about like ruining a love triangle for yourself. I don't find these relationships super spoilery, but if you think they are, I will definitely leave like I will try to figure out how to leave like timestamps down at the bottom, as well as mentioning the book before I mention the couple, so you can skip. All right, so the first one that we're going to talk about is a relationship, actually two relationships within the Darker Shade of Magic series. Now, if you haven't read this, go ahead and skip because this one could be considered a spoiler. I absolutely love Lila and Kel, and I also absolutely love Alucard and Rye. Like, both of the main, like, relationships in this book are just so good. Alucard and Rye, though, might kind of take the cake for me. Like, they're just precious. And I love the Lila-Kel dynamic. I love how she doesn't need him. She's a strong bitch on her own. She doesn't need him. But she likes him, and she wants to kiss him, and she wants him. So it's not like a, I need you, it's an, I want you. And I like relationships like that, where they're not like dependent on each other fully for strength or power or whatever. They just are bad bitches on their own, and then they just happen to want to be together. Like, that is my favorite dynamic, and I just love it throughout this series. So definitely love all four of the people and relationships in this book. The next book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, another V.E. Schwab book, but this one is the relationship between Addie and Henry. I just find it like sugary sweet and just precious. And I love Henry. Like, he is probably my favorite character in this book. I know it's all about Addie, but Henry is the one that stole my heart in this book. Like, he has anxiety and he does some really stupid stuff, but he's just this sweet guy that wants to be loved and has had his heart broken so many times, and he's been let down, and I just love him so, so much. And them two together are just the pinnacle of preciousness. And like, I wish I could read this for the first time again. Like, I have a full review for this, a spoiler-free review. If you want to check that out, I will kind of leave it in the cards for you guys. The next book, and this isn't a spoiler, I don't think, is Dark Matter. And the reason I don't think this relationship is a spoiler is because it is established at the very first page, basically, that Jason is married, and him and his wife are just the best. He fights so hard to get back to her, and I love those like beginning chapters where they're just like a boring married couple, because like, I'm a boring married person. Like, me and my husband are a boring married couple with kids, and that is exactly what this is. And time again, Jason chooses his wife instead of anything else in the multiverse. So I just absolutely love their relationship and dynamic, and just how much he loves her and how much he's willing to sacrifice and give up for her. And it's just so good. It's probably one of my favorite parts of this book. The next book is Where Dreams Descend. I absolutely love this book. Like, this was one of my top books of the year. And the romantic relationship within this book that I absolutely love is DeMarco and Kalia, our main girl. She is just this powerhouse magician, and he is like kind of a washed up magician that has fallen on kind of hard times, but like because of himself, basically. Like, he did one trick that ended up super, super badly, and he swore he would never perform again. He lost his magic, and he is now judging the competition that Kalia finds herself in. And he becomes her mentor, basically. But they hit it off, and he is just the sweetest. Like, always, like, making sure everything's okay with her. Like, never forcing himself where he shouldn't be. Like, very thoughtful of a human being. And I just love that, right? Like I said, I love that we're both amazing on our own. We don't need each other, but we want each other. That is definitely Kalia in this book. She's like, don't need a man, but want one. So definitely love the relationship in this book. The next relationship is almost for certain a spoiler. So if you have not read the 5th season, I recommend skipping this. It's not the whole series, but just if you haven't read the first one, I recommend going on to the next. But my absolute favorite relationship in this book is Cyanite with Alabaster and Inan. It is a polyamorous throuple that just is fantastic and beautiful and sweet and heartbreaking, and I just loved everything about it. I love how that relationship plays out in importance during the rest of the series, and it's just so good to see something that could have turned into a I want him, no I want him, but then it ended up being they're like, well, let's just all be together and make it work and be this like happy polyamorous family. And it was so good. And we don't see that enough in books. Just them living their lives, wanting to all be together, living together, loving together, raising children together. Like, it is freaking fantastic. So I highly recommend this book for something that we don't see very often. All right, the next book is Air Awakens by Elise Kova. I don't read a whole lot of like fantasy romance, but this is a favorite of mine. I love this whole entire series, and the couple in this is Vala and Aldrich, and that's kind of established pretty early on in book 1, so it's really not much of a spoiler, but I love them through the entire series. They have their ups and downs, they have their fights, they have their breakups, they have their moments, but there's never a time where you think they don't love each other. There's never a time where you don't like them or you want her to be with someone else. And it's just so good seeing their struggles throughout the series and what they have to go to make it, and like what they have to go through to just be together. And not only is it a beautiful romance, like there's also some really sad moments in this book and some really heartbreaking like depictions of war. So this is just such a good series, and I love the romance in it, and I'm excited to reread this with the self-published in coming up soon. Another one that I absolutely love the romance in is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Palpretto. I love the romance in this book. I love it in the second book, and I can't wait to read the third book. And I'm talking about Veronica and Tristan. They are so, so sweet, right? Now, if you haven't read this, you might want to move on forward because minor spoilers, but Veronica ends up pretending to be a boy in order to like kind of infiltrate into these Phoenix Riders so she can become one as well. Well, she ends up befriending Tristan, and he kind of starts to fall for her while she's Nick in her boy persona. And then when he finds out that she's Veronica, he doesn't care. Like, he still is falling for her. So he, like, loves her either way. And I just absolutely loved that aspect of it. And it's super, super minor and easy to miss. But you really feel like he would have loved Nick for Nick, or he would have loved Veronica as a Veronica. He just loved the person. And I just thought that was so great. And then it translates into the second book where you can tell they really, really care for each other. And there is a lot of angst and will they, won't they? And like, come on, y'all, just get together. But it is done so well. And I really love it in this book. All right, next up, we have Born by Jeff Vandermeer. This relationship is pretty established from jump. And that is Rachel and Wick. Rachel is living with Wick. They are dating, but like living in separate parts of their house. So they're a very independent couple. Like, they hook up, they love each other. She definitely loves him. He definitely loves her. And they have their issues and they're come to blows. But in the end, you can tell how much they really care about each other. And I love seeing them because they're also an older couple. And I just love our older protagonist, and it's just such a good book anyway. Like, this is a really weird book. And Rachel's just a badass. Like, yes, like her and Wick have a very symbiotic relationship where they help each other out and they kind of each benefit from the relationship and from being just friends and living with each other. But it's just so good. And I absolutely love them. And I love how Rachel is kind of like the badass in the relationship. She's like the strong one. So definitely check this one out. Another one is House in the Cerulean Sea. Now, I don't know if I would consider this a spoiler or not, but you might. So the relationship in this book that I am talking about is Linus and Arthur. And what all can I say? I feel like this book has been talked about and raved about and just loved for so long. And it's just so good. And their relationship is the sweetest. And I just love their dynamic where Linus is just like this boring white bread dude and Arthur is like super flamboyant and powerful and magical. And no one really knows why Arthur is attracted to Linus, but he is. And then Linus is attracted to Arthur and he's like, there's no way he likes me, boring me, when he's just like so amazing. But it's so good. And I just love how they become like fathers to these kids. Like, it's just the best. Like, to read this book. Next, we have the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. This could be considered kind of a spoiler, so if you haven't read at least the first book, then go ahead and bypass it. I won't go into anything that happens in books 2 or 3, but I want to talk a little bit about Ven and Elend. I love them. Again, kind of like in the first book I talked about, Ven is this like powerhouse and Elend is not. So she's like the powerhouse in this relationship and he loves her and I love it. Like, she doesn't need him. She wants him. And that is what makes me like a relationship so much. It's not codependent. It's very, very much, I love you, I want to be with you, I want to be with you because I want to be with you, not because I need to. And that's just my favorite kind, and y'all know that. So of course I love Ven and Elend. They are just amazing together. They balance each other out so well. And I'm excited to reread this with the Crab Along because I haven't read this in quite some time. This was like the first book I read that got me like back into reading like epic adult fantasy, so I'm excited to get back into this world and check it out again, and I know I'm still gonna love Ven and Elend. And the final book that I want to talk about with a fantastic relationship, one of my favorite romantic relationships, is the Starlos C by Erin Morgenstern. This book, I love everything about this book. I have a full review for it if you want to check that out. But I absolutely adore the relationship between Zachary and Dorian. They are just so good together. There's a few moments where I felt like it moved too fast, but other than that, I love them together. They, again, balance each other out super, super well. We have one that's like more of a like stoic warrior type and one that is more a like a brainy nerdy type, and they just fit together and they work so well together, and they just have this like innate attraction from the start, which I absolutely love, and then they eventually give into it, and it's just so sweet. This whole book is fantastic, so pick it up. All right, guys, those are some of my favorite relationships in sci-fi and fantasy books. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I enjoyed coming up with this list because, again, I love romance when it's done well. When you don't need each other, but you want each other. I love when there's not a love triangle. I love when like it's just a good, healthy relationship. And even though it might have its issues and it's back and forth and some will they, won't they, I love when it's just good and healthy and well done. And when it is a really good subplot of a book, I absolutely adore it and eat it up. I'm not really a romance reader, but when there's romance in my sci-fi fantasy as a really well done side plot, I is happy. All right, well, I'm Jessie. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.